Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to this AFK journey video. So before I continue speaking in this video, I would like to thank a few of my VN guild mates who actually put Cyran up to Supreme Plus, which allow us to actually farm against them to test out the mechanics of this unit and discuss deeper for today's PSA video. So you guys know who you are, and in this video we're going to talk about Cyran's first impression in the VN server, as well as where I see him being used and where and who should not go for this character. Okay, so first of all, based on initial testing, I think Cyran is definitely a unit that is usable across different game modes. The only few game modes where I think Cyran is not that good would be for the bossing ones like Dream Realm, as well as Guild Supremacy, and maybe even future bossing contents, because this unit is more of a AoE control centric with the ability to insta kill kind of unit. So I think game modes where you kill a lot of minions like Relentless Rumble, game modes like AFK stages, or any stage where you're able to benefit from the AoE and control will greatly appreciate from Cyran's kit. But everywhere else, like the bossing side, damage ranking side, probably not the best, because this unit's damage number is not that big, and on top of that he has no ways to actually buff himself up tremendously, and his kit is more PvP centric by nature of the EX weapon part. So that is Cyran's ability so far in terms of his usage. So if you're seeking out for a meta character that's decently good everywhere else, Cyran's probably not the one you should go for, right? On the AFK stage pushing side, I personally tried Cyran out with obviously the Iron Armors combo, and I think it works pretty well. But the thing is, one thing I realized about Cyran in the AFK stage pushing side is that his damage numbers might not be the most spectacular. So you might have a very good control lineup right here, but you would need other units which could actually feel the big damage numbers if you want to push to the higher deficit stages. So like, for example, let's say if we have this unit over here, for example, like we have Iron Armors, Arden is actually, I'll say, like much stronger in terms of damage if you are able to pull the Iron Armors combo off. But then, right, if you use Cyran over here, I've seen some replays with regards to Cyran's damage numbers. I think he's quite okay, but then like he's obviously not as powerful as the likes of Bonnie in terms of numbers. So those are the few things about Cyran. I think he definitely works, but like you probably need to fine-tune your team such that Cyran is your control unit that pulls everyone together, and then he is a unit that is more disruptive, right, rather than being the main damage dealer. So for the PvP side, let's talk about what I feel about Cyran so far. I think one word for him would be meta warping, because this character would actually change out the meta in terms of certain team setups, rendering them less effective, because his ability of shutting down the artifact at the start of the battle, slowing down what that artifact wants to do, is quite massive. Like, there are so many battles that I lost, and I'm wondering to myself, like, what can I do in these situations other than running another Cyran myself to counter the opposing silence from the opposing Cyran? So that is one thing I did. I also did some one copy testing. So obviously Cyran as a one copy unit is pretty bad, so I'm not going to speak too much about the one copy testing. But in terms of Cyran's role in the PvP side, this ability to deal a lot of damage once he's able to cast his ultimate and also control your team, and more importantly, that 8-second silence at the start of battle on the artifact is quite crazy, because in a sense, there are so many artifacts that are insanely good when you combo it with the right units. And there are so many teams, for example, the Thunderstrike spell team, that wants to quickly burst you down. But what do you do when the artifact don't activate in the first 8 seconds and the opponent has some way to prevent you from sniping them down? So that is actually something which I thought for quite a bit, and I think that this is going to sort of warp the PvP meta in a sense to turn away from defenses that are less artifact reliant, because what will happen is if you run a very artifact reliant team, silence on the artifact for 8 seconds is just going to cause you to lose the fight really easily. So I do think that certain teams will still work, for example like Dino team, but let's say if you want to make teams like that work, you can't just put the very standard done and dino line up with all the unit positioning. You got to make necessary adjustments such that the team evolves to deal against this artifact silence ability right here. So on top of that, another part of the mechanic with regards to this skill is for this very first part, Enlightening, Confining, and Starshot, it's in order. So he will cast Enlightening on himself first, followed by Confining, followed by Starshot. So if you go by this order, there is actually a gap where your units with some of the at the start of battle effect, like best case example, Bonnie, right, with the Decay Switch over here, will be able to cast their skill before they get confined. So this is good news for certain units, because if he's able to silence the artifact and silence the backmost unit at the start almost immediately, then that's pretty much going to sort of like kill a lot of meta teams out there. So that is with regards to this ability. And other than that, if you were to take a look at his damage numbers, so I think in terms of his numbers, I think he's okay. Like, he's not as impressive as Bonnie right here. So we do some replays with, for example, Team Cho as well. So Team Cho ran him with, for example, Kellen as well as Rowan together with Twins and Bonnie, right? So Grave Bomb plus Light Barrel right here. We have a battery, we have a support, we have control with damage over time. So pretty impressive damage as well. And then we have, for example, Tony right here. Tony did the usual Bonnie plus Tarsi combo together with Cyran, which I think works really well. And I think if you were to run him together with Iron Armor's Ardent, it works as well, right? If you're able to activate the Iron Armor's Ardent Burst combo itself. So those are the few combos which I think Cyran works really well. I do think that Cyran as both a control as well as a burst unit in PvP is quite powerful, because on the burst side, if your opponent is not running Cyran, this opposing Cyran will be faster than your opponent, right? Because of the slowdown of one unit as well as the silent skill over here. And if you're playing a more sustain heavy team itself, I do think that he will still work because his gravity requiem is quite crazy. So let's take a look at like the fight over here, where he's able to unleash a few ultimates for the massive requiem ability. Okay, so in this team, right, I have quite a fair bit of sustain because I'm going with Ludovic together with our dear Damien, together with the awakening spell with a lot of defensive stats and heal for the team itself. So we are very defensive, and then this is where we are able to store quite a bit to allow our units to actually survive for the 8 seconds of the initial silence. So I was trying to test whether or not using the more highly stated artifact is better against him, but it turns out that it's not that good, because his Gravity Requiem, if you allow it to cast like 2 or 3 times, is quite scary, because it basically pulls all your units in place and then pull them towards the area where the black hole is, right? So this control is quite big. If your opponent doesn't have any control ability or control negation or CC immunity, then they will be put towards this center right here, which will be quite a massive control. So he is a very good control unit and also a pretty good burst unit in the PvP side. Okay, so for the very last part is with regards to his Mystic Collection Mechanics. That's how you guys might be interested. So for this part, I would like to thank Netamago for allowing me to take him on in Friendly Arena to do the mechanics testing for this unit over here. So first of all, Cyran's confining spell does not work against unaffected units or units with invincible. So for this part, we have the Wildest Factional Talent, where Bonnie as well as Lime will be the prime carrier with invincible, and for this case, Cyran will be confining the Iron instead. So this is mechanics number 1, which we'll talk about later. And mechanics number 2, like I mentioned earlier, if you play the fast game against Cyran, if you don't have your own Cyran, your artifact being silenced is quite game changing, because a lot of teams are OP because of the artifact combination, and this is where this unit is game changing in the sense he changes the way you make your team with regards to the artifact you use. Because if your opponent has a Cyran that is able to silence your artifact and have other units to pair with him to push through, yeah, that could actually be a great problem for your defense itself. So that's why I say he's quite game changing, because this skill is immediately at the start of battle. So the artifact affected, right, or the artifacts affected will be affected at a different level, right? So to put it simply, I think artifacts that are usually really fast paced, they are definitely gonna be like a lot weaker with Sirens in existence. Artifact that gives you a lot of stats and play a more stally battle should be able to perform better, but even for that, if you're playing a more control-centric variant of Cyran, it's still going to be pretty challenging. So that's for the Mystic Collection side. So for this part, let's showcase a replay. So I'm using my Burst comp, Iron Alma's Burst with Lily May at Paragon 1 to match up the tiers. And then the opponent is using Cyran together with Bonnie and Iron Alma's and Damien together with the Lightning Strike. So the opponent Lightning Strike or Storm Strike spell is just activating continuously, whereas mine was just sealed up for that first 8 seconds. So you guys saw how fast the battle ended within like 8 seconds, like with the Storm Strike spell. So yeah, playing fast against Cyran, not gonna work because yeah, your artifact is not working. And then playing slow against Cyran, I think could be probably the better way to play against him, because like his damage output is not so good. But then again, like I mentioned, I don't know, I feel like the control part about his kit is quite scary if you play the slow game. So in this part, I tried to use a more defensive artifact as well as a more defensive team, which gives me more stalling power. But then when you combine him with like the likes of Bonnie as well as the ultimate being able to pull everyone in right here, I don't know, like even if you play a very stally team, it might not be the wisest choice against him. So that's why I think this unit is pretty crazy. So out of all the different artifacts, I think artifacts like Frostfall spell is a little bit less affected because this is based on the ultimate of your team. So let's say if your ultimate is not the kind that casts the ultimate at the start, it's less affected because this charge will only come into play when your unit starts using the ultimate. And if your unit is building out energy, at least within the first few seconds, I think Frostfall spell is not that much affected. Although to a certain extent, it's still going to be silenced by his ability, but less affected. Your artifact, like for example Surging Spell, I think stat-wise Surging Spell is quite strong. So if you can survive and allow that Light Beam to come online, it is still feasible, right? I think in terms of the Surging Spell side. But I think Light Forge, Storm Strike, or the at the start of battle quick bursty kind of artifact definitely gets a lot weaker with regards to the existence of Cyran. Yeah, so that's with regards to the different mechanic side, the testing side. And one last thing with regards to Cyran's mechanic is that this ability over here, Curse Grasp. As much as this ability might not seem to be very impressive, but it is actually a secret killer. It is a secret weapon of his because this skill over here lifts the enemy into the air, imprisoning them for 1 second before hurling them into the area with the most enemies. Do take note that imprison slows the enemy's energy charging as well. So this is not just a simple control skill, it is the confining spell imprison. So for those of you guys who don't know, the wording imprison is one that prevents them from moving or acting, which means that they don't get energy unless they're getting hit by other damage sources. So this is quite impactful in slowing your opponent's skill usage. And this skill also knocks the target down and then deal damage and allow you to target enemies who are neither unaffected or steadfast. So this part was something which I spoke about, but Brownie actually pointed out where this skill targets specifically units that are not in this state. So there are certain skills in the game where the units will still use the skill against the unit to do damage, right? For example, let's say Nara's Pool, for example, right? Nara's Pool will still target the opponent even if they are unaffected, but the thing is the skill does not actually affect the unaffected target. Then this will cause your Nara to move in front because she won't be able to pull anyone, and then she will have to walk up to perform her melee attack. But for Cyran's case, because this ability prioritizes an enemy who is neither unaffected or steadfast, it means that the control part of the skill is always going to be online. So this is quite a powerful secret weapon that precisely targets units that you can control. So this is another part about Cyran which I want to speak about, and that's pretty much it for this video. So for Cyran's case, I think this unit is definitely going to see some use for the PvP side. How strong? I don't know. We'll test him out more on the global server once we pull him up in there and then discuss more about him. But in terms of the PSA side, if you're not a PvP maniac, you are fine with your PvP ranking, I think he is a character that you can hold on for a little bit more for the others to do testing and decide whether or not you want to commit to him itself. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys!